Let's take off the glasses that we're currently using. Deep breath. And then let's start to look at this from a really creative perspective. Who is this child? What do they need? What are they capable of? And how do we help with that?
You're listening to Parenting with Impact, the podcast for parents like you, raising complex kids to become capable, independent adults, even in this complicated world. Each episode brings expert insights and real-life strategies to help you parent with confidence, calm, and clarity. Here are your hosts, Elaine and Diane.
Welcome back, everybody, to another conversation in the Parenting with Impact podcast. My guest is Tania Johnson from the Institute of Child Psychology. And we've been talking and collaborating a little bit more in the last year. And so it's delightful to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Oh, it's such a pleasure, Elaine. Thank you.
Really glad to have you. So tell us a little bit about how you came to be leading an organization called the Institute of Child Psychology. How to be an interesting path.
Yeah. It's actually been such a beautiful, wonderful, fulfilling journey. Tammy and I both started off in private practice. We are both registered psychologists and registered play therapists. And while we found that the work that we were doing with children primarily was wonderful, we really wanted to be talking to the caregivers in a child's world, the parents, the teachers, the daycare providers. And both of us felt like we're the people that were truly making an impact in a child's life was not as a therapist. It wasn't, we saw a child maybe for 4 hours a month if we were lucky, sometimes 2 hours a month. They're coming every other week. And the people that we actually wanted to be speaking to were the people who actually make an impact in a child's world. We very much see ourselves as guides instead of as the change makers. And so we wanted to talk to the change makers. And so we started small. We started just throwing workshops on anxiety, our main topic on why kids were coming to see us. So we started off just doing workshops locally, and it grew and it grew and it grew. So we had a number of different workshops, and then we actually went online before COVID. And then things changed over COVID, as it did for everybody. And we started having more experts come in. So it wasn't just me and Tammy doing workshops. And basically what the Institute became was a hub for some of the top minds in the world. So we've had all sorts of amazing, amazing people who I never thought I would get to speak to in my entire life, like Dr. Gabor Mate, Dr. Neufeld, Dr. Shafali, just incredible people talking on our platform. And so that's where we found ourselves. It's really, Tammy and I are still creating new courses and new workshops. We also have our own podcast. But we are primarily there to connect people with really some of the greatest minds when it comes to child psychology.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And I love the way you think about it, the greatest minds when it comes to child psychology, that notion of the thought leaders. Like there's a lot of information out there. And then some people, we spend our time trying to figure out how do we communicate what we know in a way that parents can really access it and receive it and use it, right? It's not enough to know it. We actually want it to make it to help them integrate it and make it usable.
Yeah, and that's actually where we started too in our journey, is that we know how lost parents can get when they go down the Google rabbit hole. And that's what Tammy and I wanted to do, is we wanted to kind of take a lot of the research and then really just put it into like concrete chunks for parents where they could go like, okay, I've got this. And so that's what we based all of our workshops on. And then when we just brought these people in, it's just, there's so many people which are such a gift to the world, that we wanted people to hear more and more and more from them. So really, it's just been such a beautiful journey.
Yeah, it really is. I share that love for getting to the core of what's really going on with kids by getting to the people who are spending so much time with them.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
When I finished my master's degree, I think I had a very different idea about what I did to what I actually ended up doing. Just recognizing that change comes from mobilizing and empowering the people in a child's world. It doesn't come from the 1 hour in clinic. And it's changed everything about the way that I practice. And also realizing I'm just one of those people in a child's village. So really just repositioning how I saw myself and my role has been huge as well.
So Talk about that. Mobilizing and empowering the people in a child's world, right? I love that language. I think Diane and I would say that's very much what we're about as well, right? It's an empowerment approach. Um, Talk a little bit about how parents respond to that. What's your experience of how parents respond to that?
Varies. It varies. I've learned that a lot of it has to do with setting expectations from the very beginning, from the very, very, very first session where a parent comes in so that they can decide. I do still do some clinical work. So in the clinical work that I do, a parent can decide if they want to work with me or not. And like everything in life, sometimes it's a fit, sometimes it's not. So, for some families, we have an identified patient. So it's, this child needs help, this teen needs help, work with them. And it can be very hard for families to sometimes expand and go, oh, okay, maybe mom needs some work here, maybe dad needs some work, perhaps the teacher needs to finesse what she's doing over here too. That process and understanding that can be quite challenging for some families, and understandably so. I've got kids too. If someone was like, well, Tania, let's look at your stuff too. It's kind of like you take a step back and go, oh, no, 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 no. I was bringing my kid in to see you. So work with her. Don't look at my stuff. So for some families, I think it is a little bit more challenging, but honestly, for a lot of families and teachers, I find that people are so receptive to, if we're actually going to create long-term change here outside of the clinic, let's get moving. Let's do this. Let's actually make use of your time and of your resources and actually create change here. I spend a lot of time now talking to teachers, talking to daycare providers. I don't believe it's about just talking to the parents. I don't believe it's about just talking to the team. It's about talking to as many people as I possibly can to go, how do we create change? What do we actually need to see in terms of shift?
So tell us a little bit about your philosophy of how do you create change? I mean, we're coaches. We come from a coach approach. You come from a therapeutic lens. What do you tell daycare providers and teachers and parents about what it takes to create change?
Yeah. So there's some stuff so I work primarily from an attachment lens. There
Yeah.
are some things that may be classified as a little bit more behavioral, but I like to work with a kid or with a teen first. So for example, um, the most recent call I had was with a school, but I've been working with that client. I've seen her probably 7 or 8 times now. So I've really got a deep understanding of where her feelings of competency are, what drives her, what gives her hope. So my favorite way to work is to do a deep dive into that. Who are you? What drives you? What worries you? So really looking kind of deeper and then going, okay, so what has she told me now? And then how do I relay this to school? So for example, with school, what I said to her is that to the school is these are the areas where she feels competent. This is where she's really struggling. How do we increase her sense of competency? What can we give her at school? So how can we help her to really show her school where she's competent, where her sense of purpose is? So for example, we're going to pair her with a younger student in a younger grade. So that's her competency. And then I spoke about belonging. She feels like she just doesn't belong anywhere at school. She doesn't feel like she has a person. How do we increase her sense of, this is my person, this is my adult I can speak to? How do we get her more connected to peers? So while those steps become concrete, initially it's really coming from this deep dive about what is she struggling with, and then where is she feeling like she's really shining, and then how do we explore all of those areas for her?
Beautiful. So when you're talking to parents generally, like one of the questions sometimes we ask here is like, what's from your lens, and I hear you're saying that you come from an attachment lens, what's the message you want parents of complex kids overall, not this one kid, but overall, what's the message you want them to understand?
Mm-hmm. Give your child time. I think a big one is that often we just need to shift our perspective of where we're standing to see where they shine and how they shine. And so to all of my parents, I always say to them, let's take off the glasses that we're currently using, take a deep breath, and then let's start to look at this from a really creative perspective. Who is this child? What do they need? What are they capable of? And how do we help with that? So that's always my message is all of those preconceived notions of these are their diagnoses, and this is this, and this is that, and this is the report. It's fine. You can tell me that in the first session. But after that, let's put that aside. And then let's really start to get creative here. And I think that that's part of the favorite parts of my work is how do we understand this child in a really different way? I don't want to be another therapist that comes in and focuses on behavioral strategies, reports, diagnoses. I want to be somebody who sees your child differently. And together, when we see your child differently, there are so many possibilities.
So you're really looking at the whole picture of who is this human being in front of you who's evolving and growing and coming together creatively to support that.
Yeah. And whether it's sleep or movement or nutrition or less screens or finding something that they can advocate for, where does this child shine? And that is my work. That is my work. And I find in my role, I have to be very careful not to get pulled into pre-existing narratives about my clients. And that's also why I like to work with kids and teens first before I really start to work with the parents. Because very often the referral reason for a child is very different to what I actually end up working on in therapy.
The way we talk about it is that iceberg concept, right? What you think is the issue on the surface. And then as you start getting underneath, you start discovering there's something else and something else and something else going on.
Absolutely. And if you work, I find in my work, if I work just with the child or just with the parents, it's very hard to actually get underneath.
Beautiful. Okay. All right. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to come back. I've got a couple of questions to follow up.
Thank you.
Do you recognize current ADHD interventions fall short? At Dig Coaching, we have developed a new field of engineering and a new ADHD intervention called Cognitive Ergonomics from the Inside Out. To learn more, visit cognitive-ergonomics.com.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Elaine on the Parenting with Impact podcast, and my guest is Tania Johnson from the Institute of Child Psychology. And we've been talking about an attachment lens approach and really understanding what's going on with a kid before you start engaging with the adults in that kid's life to help them really take what in our lens we would call a strength-based approach, right? To really see what is it that makes this kid tick? What are some strengths that you can play into? How can you help them find motivation and engagement? Two things jumped at me with what you said. And I remember one of them and I wrote down one and I forgot the other. So we'll start with the one. I mean, the last thing you were talking about was the importance of the strength-based approach. And you tapped in for a moment before that about the importance of belonging. And I really want to take us down a conversation a little bit about belonging and the importance of belonging, both for kids of what we call complex kids, right? But also for the families, the parents, the teachers. Like belonging is something that the outside world doesn't talk about a lot, right? And yet it's fundamental to the work that we're talking about in terms of supporting these families. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So we all know what it feels like when we're sitting with a friend or somebody who we love and we feel completely safe. And within that safety, it just allows all of our defenses to kind of melt a little bit and we can start to think in creative ways and we can start to go, okay, what needs to change? How am I doing right now? But when we don't have that sense of shared connection, when I'm sitting with someone and I go, oh, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this person. Now we think about a child in school when they're sitting with a teacher where they just feel that discomfort. They don't feel as if they're deeply seen or valued or heard. For those kids, all of their resources are going to, how are we? Am I okay? Am I safe? What's this person thinking right now? Whereas when children and when teens and when we feel seen, valued, heard, deeply heard, and so often these words are thrown around, but when we can hear that somebody's attuned and they're listening, what it does is it allows all of those stress systems of, am I okay right now? Am I safe? Just to relax. And as that relaxes, basically what happens is our ability to think creatively, think deeply, think in new ways sparks. Because now that energy is no longer going to a sense of safety and belonging. It's going to, I'm okay. I am exactly where I need to be right now. I don't need to pretend to be anything. I don't need to say something specific. I don't need to act a specific way. I am okay. So when our children feel as if they have that at school with their teacher or with their peers, that's when we start to see their greatest learning happen, not only about themselves, but about the world and about what they're learning at school too. So that's really what we're looking for, is places where our children can be exactly who they are without pretending to be something else or somebody else, because that's when we see them shine the most.
Yeah. As I'm hearing you describe this, and we talk about this a lot with parents, that the language of relationship and trust, right? That the foundation of that pyramid of their independence is your relationship with them and their ability to feel safe and trusting. And, I hear you describing in a school environment, right? A kid is not going to be available for learning if they don't feel safe. And the same is also true in the home environment, right? That if we think we're creating an environment of safety because our kids, they have their needs met and they are clothed and fed and we're doing all these things for them, then there sometimes is a disconnect between what parents think is creating an environment of trust and safety and what kids experience that way. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. So, Elaine, let me ask you, when you are with somebody who you can feel is listening not to speak, is listening because they want to see you and understand you deeply, what happens for you?
It just feels like a warm hug. I'm present, I'm held, I'm safe. There's a sense that someone else cares, really. It feels like it communicates a caring.
Oh, beautiful. I love that. It communicates caring. I absolutely agree. And I think so often as parents, and it happens to me too sometimes, we get so caught up in now we have to go to ninja and soccer and have
Doing.
your spelling and with your laundry. It's life. It happens sometimes. But I think so often for parents, we get caught up in this, I need to provide as much as possible. That child needs, we need lots of limits. We need all of our structure. This is what it means to raise a child. And yes, while those things are there, really what is fundamental is this child going, Mom, Dad, Grandma, they get me. They see me. They listen, not to speak, not to lecture. And really what's happening there is kind of what we call that serve and return process is, and that's...
And again, what you call what?
The serve and return process.
Serve and return.
Is fundamental to connection, to a secure attachment, is I, as a child, say, Mom, I had such a hard day. Johnny wouldn't play with me today. That's the serve. And then the return is Mom going, come tell me about it. That's the return.
Sorry, babe.
Yeah. So when that serve and return happens, that's where we build a really close relationship. But so often, because we have our own lecture, our own stories to tell our kid, we're trying to get them out the door, we're distracted by our phone, whatever it is.
We want to make sure they learn something.
Yes.
Right? That's a big one. Yeah.
That serve happens, and it's like a tennis ball. It goes, it's served over the net, and then it just drops. And we're not going to get it going. We're not always going to get that serve and return right. But we really want to try and work towards, what is this child telling me? What do they need? How do I keep quiet? And how do I actually listen?
Yeah.
That's the warm hug that you're talking about.
Yeah. And as parents, I think we get caught up in that, as you say, in the doing of life. And so we don't even realize we're not returning the serve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
So much so.
Or we want it, and here's the other thing, this just in, our kids are struggling with these complex issues and we don't want them to, and we feel bad that they're struggling with it. And so then we want to help them reframe the thinking. Don't feel that way. You feel this way instead.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Or, when our kid says, I was so lonely at school, nobody wants to play with me, then we say to them, oh, you're just amazing. I'm sure kids want to play with you. We don't hear them at all. Whereas they need to be seen and go like, oh, that's tough.
Yeah. So that acknowledgement piece is so enormous. To acknowledge from a place of compassion is what I hear you describing. Whatever their experience is, to make sure that we are validating that experience is real for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Huge, 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 huge.
It is. is
Yeah.
so huge.
Yeah.
And yet it's so easy to get into trying to fix it.
Yes, because that's what we do as parents, right? We want to just
Okay.
rush in there. But I often say, like, it's exactly what we need when we sit with a friend over coffee, is we don't need them to kind of rush to candy coat it, because then it's like they're fixing their own fears. We need them to hear us, and that's exactly what our children need to.
Yeah. And what I want to acknowledge for those of you listening, and I'll put it in the show notes, that we teach a tool, a conversation technique that kind of describes what you're talking about, called ACE, which is acknowledgement with compassion before you explore your options, right? So instead of jumping to problem solving, we slow down and we really allow ourselves to be present to our kid. What I want to acknowledge for the parents listening is sometimes that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we're not feeling heard. We're not feeling safe. We're not sure how to handle this situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
100%. Absolutely. And I think too, when we do mess up, and we are going to mess up, when we are messy and imperfect, it gives our kids permission to be messy and imperfect too. We're not looking for perfect parenting, but we are really helping parents to try and be aware of reflective parenting, where it's like, oh, I totally missed the ball on that one. Then we come back and say, like, I'm really sorry. You were trying to tell me something earlier and I wasn't able to hear you.
Is that what you mean by reflective parenting, or is there something else?
Nope, that's what I mean. Like, we want to be able to reflect on what happened. How exactly did that conversation land? Let's come back and actually go, what else needed to happen? And, the one thing I so often hear parents do is they'll say something like, I'm really sorry, but today's just been crazy, or but today you and your brother have been driving me crazy. That's not what this is about. Our children cannot learn how to be authentic and brave and courageous unless we are authentic, brave, and courageous.
Yeah, indeed. Well, this is lovely, Tania, and I think you and I could wax poetic about this for hours and then really enjoy it. And it's time to start wrapping up the conversation. Folks, if you want to find out more about Tania and her organization, the Institute of Child Psychology, you can go to instituteofchildpsychology.com. They do workshops, presentations, all kinds of resources. You find all kinds of amazing experts that have been involved with them. They've done summits. I think we've been on your summit. You said you have a podcast too. What's the podcast?
The Child.Psych podcast.
The Child.Psych podcast. So lots of resources, lots of great stuff. And as you said, I think a lot of your focus is particularly on kids with anxiety. Yes?
No, all over now. So we started off with...
That started there. I got it.
Now we have a bit of everything. And our podcast, I'm sure you feel the same way. Our podcast is probably one of our favorite parts of our work too. We have a number of really incredible experts on our podcast too.
Yeah, no, I feel it as well. And yet when we started off as Impact ADHD and then expanded to Impact Parents, because we really wanted to reflect the full range of issues that parents were dealing with, and that it's never just about whatever the diagnosis is or isn't. Yeah. So thank you. Thanks for what you're doing. Thank you for being here with us. Before we wrap, do you have a favorite quote or motto that you want to share with our community?
So probably my favorite one is by Marianne Williamson. She says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And that's something that I always talk to my kids and my teens about. What is it about your light?
I love that. I used to have that up in my office back in the day, a long time ago. Again, thank you for being here, and thank you for the work that you're doing. To those of you listening, tune in with yourself. Take a moment and ask yourself, what are you taking away from this conversation? What are you aware of now that you might not have been aware of half an hour ago? What insight do you have? And maybe how do you want to bring it forward with you into your life? And as always, friends, thank you for what you're doing for yourself, for your kids. As Tania pointed out so well, your presence, your engagement, your conscious parenting, and your being with kids in a conscious way, it makes all the difference. Take care, everybody. See you next one.
You've been listening to the Parenting with Impact podcast with Elaine and Diane. For more information on the Impact Parents community or to join Sanity School for Parents, please visit impactparents.com. If you like what you've heard, please share this podcast with friends who need similar guidance and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.